What truth do you believe society isn't ready for? Cemeteries are running out of space. Cemeteries pose significant challenges to the built environment. Even if there weren't a housing shortage and lack of space for housing, we would still be running out of space for the dead, because many cemeteries are located in our urban cores that can't accommodate growth. Deforestation is occurring that can't really be stopped, since it's mainly happening in developing countries. You can see the reduction of major rainforests over time. If you look up the Amazon shrinking, it's honestly only a matter of time. I can't comprehend why any company would think I'm more likely to buy their product if they make their commercial 20 dB louder than all other commercials. Instant boycott. You must wait 24 hours before reporting a missing person. Some questions. 24 hours from when? The time you realize they were missing? The time you estimate they went missing? The time of the initial report to police? Who is the legal timekeeper? If this is a law, it must have a designated timekeeper for official records. City police, county sheriff? Do I hire a private attorney to file a timekeeping motion in court? The police are also under no obligation to do anything but carry out the will of the court. Popping your knuckles is actually harmless, and the study that claimed it caused arthritis was heavily flawed. Studies now show that it has nothing to do with causing arthritis. Edit, fix the typo. That if you get too close to a baby bird, the mother will smell human on the baby and abandon the nest. You probably should still avoid touching baby birds for other reasons like disease or risking injury to the animal though. Since I'm already on the topic of animal myths, another common myth is that daddy longleg is the most venomous spider in the world, but it can't bite you because its fangs are too tiny. This myth is wrong on both accounts. They do have venom, but it's essentially harmless to humans, and they can bite you. The pain just typically isn't as severe as something like a brown recluse. Edit, to clear up a lot of confusion, the term daddy longleg can mean something different in different parts of the world. There are three creatures that commonly go by the name: the crane fly, the harvestman, and the house spider. Lemmings aren't suicidal. They were filming a Disney nature documentary where the producers herded them off cliffs and the misconception stuck. It's been debunked, but you ask someone about lemmings and see what they say. Height dominance in parrots is not a thing. A bird will not want to show dominance over you just because their cage is eye level. Birds just like being high up. The reason you don't want a big bird on your shoulder is because you don't want that big beak near your eyes if it becomes startled. Not sure if it counts as a myth that's been debunked, but people who misunderstand average life expectancy. When you hear that the average life expectancy was 40 a couple hundred years ago, it's not that people would only live to 40, but that half the population was dying in infancy and the other half living to 80. Obviously I'm exaggerating these ratios to make a point. Edit, a word. That handling a baby bird will make the mother reject it because it smells you on the baby. Most birds don't have a significant sense of smell, so put the naked baby back in the nest. Now, sometimes mother birds will push a sick or otherwise terminal chick out of the nest, so when people try to put it back she goes, "Hey, thought I got rid of you," and does it again. But that's not because of you. She just knows something you don't. So take that babe to a rehab rescue and hope for the best. But a lot of the time the little squishy beans just wiggle out of the nest, so feel free to put them back in. No harm done. Oh, also, carrots don't help your eyes. Night vision. That was made up by the Brits to mask the fact they had developed radar during the war. Bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly, except they obviously can. I think bumblebees perfectly exemplify the fundamental misunderstanding that lay people have of the scientific process and the difference between a law and a theory. A scientific law is a physical description of what we observe under specific circumstances. A theory, on the other hand, explains why we observe different phenomena when at least one variable isn't controlled for. So it isn't that bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly, it's that they fly as a result of a different set of variables within the mechanisms of flight. The War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938. We all know the story. Orson Welles broadcasted War of the Worlds over the Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS, but people only tuned in part way through, and heard the radio announcing that machines were landing in the country and were advancing and attacking. People panicked in the streets and thought aliens really were invading. There was hysteria on the streets, people were looting and traffic jams banked up as people tried to escape, but it turns out that isn't really true. It turns out barely anyone actually listened to the broadcast, and the few that were listening knew it was Orson Welles and knew it was just the broadcasting of War of the Worlds. If there was anyone that did tune in and mishear it and panicked, it was nowhere near the hundreds and thousands that have been reported in this myth. That the Coriolis effect has any relevant bearing on how water drains from a sink, a bathtub, or especially a toilet. I was actually taught this by a teacher. The design of toilets direct water in a specific way. The Coriolis effect would never change that, but even in more passive drainage systems, the internal flow of water and geometry of the basin will be much more significant than that of the Coriolis effect. This is true even if water sits still for long periods of time, under very specific scientific conditions, with a flat, perfectly circular pan and a centralized drainage hole. Many days after filling the water, the Coriolis effect can begin to govern the direction of the water as it's emptied. But this is not exactly practical. We do see the effect in weather patterns of course though, so that's something. Dr. The Simpsons episode in Australia lied to everyone. My mom thinks that because I shave my face I'll grow a beard. Shaving doesn't actually make the hair grow back thicker or darker, it ends up just the same. I'm a girl with blonde body hair. I use an eyebrow razor for the really short hair all over my face. I've been doing it for a while now, once every couple of weeks, and the one time I let it grow back it looked the same as before I ever touched it. Russians use pencils in space. I think originally it was a joke about how the USA spent so much money on developing a zero-G pen that could write upside down without leaking all over the place. But the USSR just sent their men up with pencils. Now I knew this was unlikely, as the shavings from a regular pencil would go everywhere. I remember emptying the classroom grinder as a messy chore, and I think every backpack I owned from first grade on had a fine dust of hand-flaked shavings at the bottom. But I also know from art supplies that there is a peel-away paper style of pencil or mechanical pencil, often with waxed lead, so I thought maybe that's what they used. Nope, I am turning 40 next month and someone finally told me I was wrong. Did you know that's a myth? Yeah. They also had to do zero-G pen research. I countered with the paper peel or mechanical pencil idea. It's not the wood shavings. That fine graphite dust would be held on electronics as an electrical conductor and there would be no way to control it. They made pens too. I don't know about wax pencils. Might be too cold up there at times. So, I knew there had to be more to the story. But for over 1/3 of my life I believed the joke relayed to me as truth from my father, now retired engineer at Lockheed Missiles and Space, about the budget savings of the USSR. It has made me question a lot of facts I took for granted because Dad is smart and he said that glass is a super-cooled liquid that is perpetual flowing down. As proof they show medieval window glass that's thicker at the base, and thinner on top. Explained over the centuries it flowed down, but that is actually all a myth and bogus. I think this is caused because medieval glass-making techniques were imperfect, and they usually put the thicker parts down, in order to increase stability. That cats kill babies. I've run into this so many times since having kids, and it's not the older grandmas making these statements. I've had 20-year-olds tell me that you can't have cats if you plan to have babies because they'll steal their breath or some other variation. No amount of reasoning or rationale will dissuade them of this belief. That the Emperor Constantine picked the canon of the Bible at the Council of Nicaea. The truth is, not only did Constantine have absolutely nothing to do with the canon of the Bible, neither was the canon even discussed at the Council of Nicaea, let alone decided. I don't know where this myth comes from, but so many people seem to believe it, and it shows no sign of dying out. Your blood is not blue. Seriously though, I was told that everyone's blood was blue on the inside when I was younger, and I honestly don't know why my mom thought that. Maybe it's just one of those things that you only believe because your family has been saying it since your grandma's grandpa's grandma's grandma's grandpa or something like that. You don't get a cold from being outside when it's cold. Edit. Yes, you smartass fucking dorks. I know there is a connection between cold weather and your immune system. My statement still stands because the correlation is not nearly as strong as people think. It's essentially negligible unless you're a weakling who's never gone outside or taken a vitamin in their life. The vaccine autism link debunked decades ago. The sole proponent lost his medical license over it, yet every anti-vaxx's mom apparently knows someone whose friend's cousin has a child who turned autistic after the measles vaccine, and somehow not a single one has met this alleged autistic child. But the story is of course 100% true, and vaccines are terrible. I'm not sure this counts as a myth, but it's something that nags at me whenever I see the meme that everyone's skull looks the same. You can take someone's skull and, unless there is severe damage because determine their age, sex, race, and I think in some instances even if they use certain controlled substances, though that wasn't something I ever got confirmed in my forensic science class. You need to wait 24 hours before reporting a missing person. This one is an actively dangerous myth and needs to be jumped on if you ever hear it. You can report a person that's been missing for mere minutes if the circumstances are appropriate. It's usually a combination of the individual and the location that determines what's a realistic time to. People still believe corsets are harmful. Tight lacing is harmful, but a well-made corset that is laced up correctly is just a supportive garment. Corsets were originally just underwear. It surprises me how many people don't know that. That peasants in the Middle Ages were all illiterate. The study that influenced the idea determined literacy by the prevalence of books written in Latin, which only the upper class knew. Most peasants could actually read and write in their own language. Edit. I recommend some of the people reading this go watch Shay Diversity's video on the topic, as it does a very good job explaining it. The whole alpha, beta male BS. The researcher who wrote it himself not only said that this cannot be used to interpret human behavior in any way, but he even proved his own findings wrong in a later study, because this behavior only applied to wolves in captivity, so, a constantly stressful situation. That vaccines cause autism or cancer or any other incurable disease. Granted, some people react to them due to allergies or sensitivities or whatever, but the numbers of that are low. Also, is autism that much worse compared to the bubonic plague, pertussis, or polio? I guess I'd rather be autistic than lose a leg or have my lungs turn to mush, but that's just me. You only use 10% of your brain and would become superhuman if you used 100%. You actually use 100% of your brain. Each section is responsible for controlling different functions of your body. For example, the prefrontal cortex controls thoughts, memory and behavior. The parietal lobe controls language and touch. The occipital lobe controls visual processing, and the brainstem controls basic functions such as breathing and maintaining your heart rate. That a woman is supposed to bleed when she loses her virginity. That vaginas become loose the more sexual partners, sex a woman has. Does your butthole become looser with each third it passes? The vagina is a muscle in the same way. Stop it, edit. Okay, the butt has a sphincter which is not exactly the same. Which analogy do you prefer? Does your mouth become looser after you eat a big sandwich? Is that better? Edit 2. The vagina is as much a sphincter as the mouth. It's not one round muscle, but several muscles that more or less form around. The point is it's a muscle and acts as such. There is the stupid ones like the autism and the vaccines myths that should never have been believed in the first place, especially with the shoddy research around it. Then there is the ones that you can understand, like wolf packs do not have alphas, like what was believed and published for a long time. The concept is still used a lot today in pop culture. Even the guy who wrote the paper talking about alphas and wolf packs backtracked years later after new research came out putting his findings in doubt. Subliminal messages, backmasking. No conclusive evidence has ever emerged to suggest that subliminal messages or backmasking do anything at all. The one person who conducted this particular experiment for advertising admitted to A. faking his results, B. creating bias in viewers by intentionally telling them what they'd see before actually showing the image. Also, not only is it non-functional in advertising, there's no way in hell it can ever influence behavior, such as those nincompoops who think Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven contains satanic messages in reverse, or that all rock music can make viewers kill themselves through brainwashing. Also, brainwashing your fans into killing themselves is horrible business sense. Searing meat, seals and juices. Not overcooking is the only reliable method to cook a juicy steak. Once a steak is past medium doneness, the perceived juiciness drops pretty quickly. The Culinary Institute of America has a department called the Food and Beverage Institute, CIA and FBI. They got jokes that studies food myths. This was one of their early studies. More of a persistent misunderstanding than a myth. But working out will never cause you to earn less due to taxes. Tax brackets are marginal, so if your extra hours did happen to move you to a higher tax bracket, only the higher income would be taxed at the higher rate. Not sure if this counts, but tomatoes aren't vegetables, they're fruit. In fairness, this is partly true. Tomatoes are fruit, but they're still vegetables. Vegetable is a culinary term, not a botanical one. Fruit is both. I just find it personally really irritating when you get actually by someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. You never hear anyone trying to say actually pineapples are berries, so why aren't they in my mixed berry smoothie? Because they recognize it sounds obnoxious, not smart. They know how niche this is, but political science is not a good pre-law course. Every year, at least where I live, there's an avalanche of Pol-Sci majors applying for, entering law school, many of whom chose that degree just because they were planning on going into law. I speak mainly for myself, but I thought political science was the most boring, miserable experience of my college life, and I'm glad I shifted out before I devoted too much time to it. Avoid it unless you really have a genuine interest. Passion for the field doesn't matter. Almost 0% of what you learned, both in skills and stock knowledge, could really give you an edge. That dogs, or colorblind people, only see in black and white. Dogs only have two sets of cones in their eyes, so they see the same way as a person who is red-green colorblind does. That is, they have trouble distinguishing red things against a green background or green against red. There's a few other colors too, but they're a mix of red and green. Yes, I know there are other types of color blindness too. How people knowing the Earth being round is a recent thing. Even the ancient Greeks knew the world was an oblate spheroid. Pretty much every race that worked out how to navigate realized that it was not flat. My little brain can't comprehend the vast emptiness of space and the fact it supposedly just stretches on forever and never has an end. Kind of wild when you try imagine it. That all the other persons I talk to or see have their own thoughts, own inner dialogue and on life. For gaming analogies, sometimes I just feel like others are NPC and I just can't comprehend that there are more than 7 billion persons just like me.